year, new me, and in the spirit of the new year, today I have decided to let go of all that has plagued me during the last year. The Elder Scrolls Online is an MMORPG made by ZeniMax Studios, not by Bethesda Studios, despite what commenters on YouTube might have you believe. Set in the unfortunately fictional land of Tamriel, and taking place in the period known as the Interregnum.
朋友是一个坚韧不拔的纪录片，在香港这座城市的设置。主演钱德勒、罗欧斯、福波斯伊、瑞秋、莫妮卡和一些其他他妈的演员。
Yeah, they really had to squeeze a lot of events in this time, but I'm not complaining. The aesthetic created by these events is probably the best part about the game, which really says a lot about how well designed the game is, and about how goddamn questionable some of the other parts of the game are. This review might end up being a little bigger than the others, so please, wear your seatbelts tight, cause we have a lot to talk about. The Elder Kill Me This Game Took Way Too Much Out of Me Online is a truly complex game, so much so that the first layer of complexity isn't even necessarily in the game itself, it is the game's monetization scheme. Now, while it is true that only PhD certified economists such as myself can truly comprehend how this game is monetized, I will attempt to pass my knowledge to you less fortunate masses in order to prevent you from experiencing the pain of buying something you don't actually need. To start, you need to buy the base game, which is hella cheap and comes with the Morrowind DLC. In reality though, this is more of a paid demo and less of an actual game. To get the full experience, you have to buy the latest chapter and pay the monthly subscription. The subscription is honestly pretty handy. It gives you a good amount of in-game currency and the crafting bag. Many claim that the bag is essential for inventory management. Don't listen to those paying plebeians. All you have to do if you want to manage your inventory space is throw away all crafting materials you obtain until you reach CP 160, with the exception of course of any really valuable ones. From there, buy some shitty chests and place them all over your house. Use one of them for storing alchemical items, one for cooking items, and one for writs, which are basically crafting quests. Any other chests for storing gear are optimal but not essential. Store all other items you deem essential in the bank. Now, around 3 times a year, ZOS gives players 1 week of free membership in which all crafting items you possess are automatically sent to the crafting bag, and when the membership ends, they don't leave the bag. Now that I have explained to you how the crafting bag is not essential, I can tell you about the other way of buying ESO, which is buying DLCs individually or in discounted bundles. It's a bit more hefty in the short term, but it is a lot more worth it in the long term. You can even get crown sellers to buy you some of these DLCs, provided you have the gold. You might be wondering, why go through all that process when you can just buy the subscription and be done with it? And honestly, everyone has their own answer to this question. My personal answer is because the last MMO I played also had a subscription model, and that MMO left me quite scarred. Now that we talked about how to actually buy the game, time to talk about the essentials you need to purchase from the Crown Store. Nothing. Buy nothing from there. Don't even go close to that place. I have heard that people that engage with the Crown Store have reported shorter lifespans. Males have also reported suffering from erectile dysfunction, and it has been linked to women miscarrying. The Elder FIFA Online. Okay, time to talk about the world. Well, it's a big one to be sure. It's not an open world in the sense that you will never encounter a loading screen. You will be encountering plenty of those, I'm sure. There are different zones which are connected with each other, and honestly most of them are so big that you won't even notice the difference half the time, since you will be doing most of your traveling through fast traveling shrines anyway. Most people drop in this game without realizing that this game's world isn't like that of the other MMOs. You see, in other MMOs, the level of the enemies remains stagnant, creating a natural feeling of progression as your character levels up and goes from lower level areas to higher level areas. So, if you're in an area where the level of the enemies is the same as yours, you know you're in the right place. In ESO, however, the world scales with the level of the player, so you can explore any area you want without the fear of running into higher level enemies. In fact, you can just land in the game and start walking wherever you like without being interrupted by any level requirements or quest objectives. So, look at the map, see an area you like, and go along with it. If you are still feeling overwhelmed, don't worry, I made a tier list of all the areas judging them by their appearance, aesthetic, story, questing, and activities you can partake in. Note that Elsewhere is an absolute masterpiece of a zone, followed closely by Somerset and Vardenfell, followed by Craglorn, which is on the S tier, but it is not a beginner-friendly area. It's an endgame group zone. Now, you might be wondering why is the Clockwork City, Markmire, and Abaz Landing on S tier, and that's because they got the aesthetic, the story, and the questline done correctly, while the last 2 chapters have flopped in that regard. And let's talk about that real quick. It's an Elder Scrolls game, so the lore has to be a part of it. And while at a first glance you might look at the 3 Banners War and say, yeah, those factions look kinda sussy, They are part of what I would refer to as the older lore of the game. The main story of their respective areas does a fairly good job at explaining how they became allies, except in the case of the Argonians and the High Elves. They kinda just ignore that part and hoped we wouldn't notice. What matters most is the newer lore of the game, and honestly, the last two chapters have been a little bit of a nostalgia fest without adding anything substantial. For Blackwood, they decided to show a previous attempt of Mehrunes Dagon to invade the world, but let's be honest, we all know how this story ends, so why give a half-assed beginning to a story that has a pretty good mid and end point? Grimoire, in my opinion, was executed even worse. Instead of expanding on something interesting like the first vampires like LeMay, who by the way was absolutely butchered in the vampire quest, come on, even Vigilant did it better, they decided to go for a completely random plot that fell flat on its face. At least Blackreach looked nice. I understand that not everyone cares about the lore that much, but hey, it's what's on the Steam page and it's what the developer keeps talking about, so might as well do it right. And I know they can do it right, because this game has some absolute banger stories. Markmire, lizards using psychedelic drugs to pass to the afterlife. Clockwork City, the Clockwork God has an existential crisis and wants to talk about it. Even the two DLCs that followed the last two chapters have better stories than the actual chapters. Thankfully, they are walking back on this concept, probably because they have exhausted every single Elder Scrolls game, so fingers crossed I guess. Now let's talk about the gameplay. How is the combat in ESO? Well, I have thought hard about this question, and I believe that I have come up with the best answer I could possibly give. It's beautiful, but it looks like shit. Trademark. It's complex, it's fast, it's action combat, but you wouldn't know any of this just by looking at the game, because the animations look like the character model is having a seizure. And that's mostly because of two reasons. One, the combat system is based out on animation cancelling. Basically, you can get a normal attack in between your abilities, which increases your DPS, fills your ultimate bar, and cancels the animation of the first ability. Sounds pretty good. Now, what if I told you that I have just explained this fairly easy and standard knowledge to you better than the developer? Because there is no tutorial explaining this. In fact, I believe that every new player in ESO goes through an epiphany when they realize they could do that all along. Bosses become easier, ultimates become more frequent, DPS increases, and they probably also grow a six-pack due to the pure ecstasy. Second thing that holds the combat system back is the animations, or rather the lack of them. There's like 20-ish animations for every ability in the game, and there are a lot of abilities in this game. Class abilities, weapon abilities, guild abilities, PvP abilities, vampire and werewolf abilities. Of course, new animations are added in the game, they're just not in the combat system. They are somewhere else. Somewhere far, far darker. Now that you're all caught up with the combat in this game, let's talk about what there actually is to do in the world. A lot actually. The single player experience is arguably the most developed part of the game. Every zone has a lot for you to explore, and they are filled with single player activities. You have your delves, which are basically single player dungeons, public dungeons which can be done solo, and new systems such as antiquities and companions. But if I'm being honest with you, the companion system right now, much like my own channel, is a bit lackluster. Sure, you can interact with them and make them wear gear, but why do they only have so few lines of dialogue? And why can't I dress their head? Every time I enter a city, there is like 20 different companions with the same head model, and it kinda breaks my immersion. There is also the fact that companion gear isn't held by the companion. You have to carry it for them and equip it to them like they're little autistic Barbie dolls. The questing in this game is pretty good. None of that go there and kill X amount of enemies. Quests in this game are narrative driven and they generally work pretty well. What doesn't work, however, is the animations of the NPCs and their overall appearance. In 2021, it's a bit dated. I can literally see the polygons on that guy's head, you know. Also, the animations are, again, copied and pasted ad nauseum, which makes questing feel less diverse, since everywhere I go, everyone keeps busting the same old moves. It got to the point that when I did the Dark Brotherhood DLC and the camera actually started moving when I was talking to the Black Hand, I damn right almost had a heart attack. Other than that, there are two solo arenas which are pretty fun to do. You can even try and go for speedruns and get a place on the leaderboard, which gives you no real reward except bragging rights. In fact, 95% of the quests give you a weapon you don't care about and a comically small amount of gold. Other possible rewards such as decorations and motifs are constantly being added in the game, just not for the quests. Group activities in this game are also very good and probably the second best thing about the game. The 4-player dungeons are probably some of the most fun I've had in gaming. I'm telling you, if you wanna have fun as a solo player during endgame, queue up for some of the hardest dungeons on vet difficulty. It will either be a short experience as everyone instantly leaves, or a long experience as everyone commits to the dungeon and keeps dying. Also, there are a lot of secrets in many of these dungeons that give them a lot of replay value. I had nothing bad to say about this part in the beginning, but then I did one dungeon and I got stuck on one of the doors. And then I remembered, oh yeah, the bugs, and there's so many of them. Doors not being very doorsy, enemies somehow reaching outside the zone, and if you're very lucky and you update like Markath hits, 33% of all dungeons you can queue up for will result in your game eventually crashing. The trials in this game are also very fun. They can sometimes be a bit buggy as well, but generally I have nothing wrong to say about them. Oh wait, I do. Of course I do. The trials in this game reuse way too many mobs. The last boss of the newest trial in this game is a reskin of an enemy you will fight at level 10. And the boss before that isn't even a reskin, they just changed the color from blue to red. The same can be said about the dungeons, but there you are less likely to notice it, probably because it doesn't feel as impactful. But for the trials, it can feel rather underwhelming. This is still a minor complaint though. Yeah, it kinda sucks, but it's not the end of the world. Plus, if you really want to see new models, all you have to do is... nothing. You can do nothing. The more observant of you may have noticed that in the tier list for the zones, there were 2 zones that were placed on the bottom tier. Allow me to explain why that is. In short, if PvE is ESO's darling child, PvP is the abandoned bastard that was made during one unfortunate night and people just prefer to forget about it. They try to take care of it, but in reality, they just want to avoid getting reported for child abuse. As a result, the child has remained abandoned, lonely, and people either ignore it, and by extension its community, or actively chase it away from discussions and family gatherings. Now, I know that the prospect of CJs in a huge open map such as Cyrodiil might seem intriguing to you, but don't be deceived by the smoke and mirrors kind people. In Cyrodiil, there are only 2 ways of playing. Ganking or zerking. Either you will build a Nightblade with 2 proc sets and one-shot everything you see, or you will band together with the rest of the circus in an attempt to take keeps. Or don't. Honestly, there is barely anything to gain for doing so. That's right, no mounts, barely any achievements or rewards. Theoretically, you could climb the ladder and become emperor, but honestly, even that is not worth its time. There's just no long-term incentive like, I don't know, unique houses, mounts or motifs. Oh, don't get me wrong, those things are still added in the game, just not for PvP. And all of that doesn't even take into account the server performance, or rather the lack of server performance. Abilities not going off, the lag, blue screens of death, the lag, bugs regarding gear sets, and oh my god, the lag. The worst thing that could happen to ESO is receiving the same popularity as Final Fantasy or even WoW. If it did, no one would even be able to move a finger in Cyrodiil. Things are kinda better in the Imperial City. Recently, they even added new gear that can only be obtained from there, making it clearly the better zone out of the 2 for PvPing. But still, if you wanna go there, you better either be a skilled tank, a good PvPer, or be part of a group, because the prospect of getting one-shotted in literal seconds is a very real possibility. Alternatively, Battlegrounds do exist, and they are pretty fun, when you get the game mode you want of course, or when you don't queue up with premates. If not, it just becomes a waiting game to get to the next one. But to be fair, that's the case with most Battlegrounds in MMOs, or even in other games like MOBAs, so...
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Okay, time to talk about collectibles. In MMOs, collectibles in the form of mounts, cosmetics, house decorations, titles, costumes, and the like are what truly makes the endgame. And while ESO has plenty of those, let's just say that fans of collecting such items best look elsewhere. There is a lot to collect to be sure. The game has a pretty in-depth housing system, and the motif system works pretty well most of the time. Honestly, if you can get past the fact that 90% of all collectibles you can get in-game have the same or better versions of them in the Crown Store, then you will really have a good time. Mount collectibles in this game are particularly rare. There's like 1 for collecting specific antiquities, 2 for completing specific trials, and for base game shitty mounts, which I wouldn't even count. Event collectible mounts are also a thing, and don't worry, if you don't like partaking in the actual events, you can always just buy the tickets you get as a reward from partaking in the events from the Crown Store.
Everywhere I go, I see his face.
Okay, I have thrown enough not so sneaky disses at the Crown Store. So, what is actually happening there? Well, I just want you to know that if I've been calling out the Crown Store throughout this video, it's not because I genuinely have an obsession over it. We will talk about what I have an obsession with later. It's because it genuinely comes up at most parts of the game. Houses, decorations, costumes, experience scrolls, resetting tokens no one will ever get mad at, bunkers and merchants, convenience items such as the ability to buy entire skill trees or sky shard achievements for other characters after you have completed them once, an entire race which is also the best race for tanking, horse upgrades, crafting research boosts, vampire and werewolf bites. Did I mention the loot boxes? They are purely cosmetic, and genuinely I laugh at people who actually buy them, because the rare drops are so ludicrously hard to pull that you are better off just buying actual lottery tickets.
This is going to be a first. I never walk on grass. This is real grass and I'm going to walk on it.
And can we just talk about the prices of these items real quick? Some of the prices are just outright outrageous. I can pay actual housing rent in many countries with that money, you know. And what is the point of giving an achievement for collecting all motifs of a particular set if I can just buy the set from the Crown Store? What am I actually achieving here? If it's not pay to win, it's paid for convenience to the point of winning, because of how much gold or time you will be saving. The regular way of obtaining these motifs is by doing the same dailies for 40 days straight, or just by buying them with gold from guild stores. You're either saving on your time or your gold. With that being said, there are plenty of good ways to customize your character and your house without paying. It's just that it will probably not look as good and will definitely not be as fast. I bought a fairly good looking house and decorated it with everything the base game had to give me, and it actually came out pretty slick. The game does have a lot of decorations for you to collect, and if I had to make a list of all the problems it currently has, Crown Store decorations would probably be bottom tier. The so-called convenience items are a lot worse. So you're probably wondering, why did I leave the game if I care so little about the things I just complained about? Well, let's talk about the one thing I didn't mention so far.
It come with Edward. It come with Edward. It come with Edward. It come with Edward. Edward.
I was big into this game, you know. It was the only game I played for the better part of 2 years. By the time the Flames of Ambition update landed, ya boy was full on endgame raiding, PvPing in Battlegrounds, doing veteran arenas, the life, you know. Now, a lot of people did not like the new champion point system that came with this update, but I was not one of those people. I actually liked the new CP system very much.
Edward.
Then Blackwood hit. It was okay, the new companion system was a little bare bones, and the zone was a little bland, but I was doing other things at the time, so the new content really wasn't in my mind that much. Plus, they were adding a new Endeavor system soon. I did not expect anything big to come of it, probably something to convince players and lawyers that no, we swear loot boxes are in gambling, we provide alternatives. Then 2 weeks later, the Endeavor system came to the live servers. Side note, the Endeavors were brought to the public test servers, but their prices were hidden from all testers until they came to the live servers, which prevented anyone from giving any form of feedback on them. Very sneaky Zos. So when they did come to the base game and I actually saw their ratios, well, I think that the part of me that loved this game kicked the bucket that day. Let's not be naive here, people, okay? This is EA Games levels of bad. The Elder Battlefront 2 online. The tomfoolery did not stop there though. For the first few days, the daily and weekly rewards were set higher than what would later become the average. As of right now, assuming that you get 20 endeavors for dailies and 250 for weeklies, which is an estimate more generous than what Zos would often give, it will take you 1 week to get a single common item and a little more than 2.5 months to get a basic mount. And again, these estimates are very generous. To get the top rewards given these estimates, it will take you 41 weeks of dailies and weeklies, and given that these items actually rotate, the chances of you getting what you actually want is what us professionals call unlikely. Now, you might call me an ungrateful scumbag for not appreciating at least the opportunity given to us so gracefully by Zos to get something without having to throw our wallets into a gambling system. However, in the weeks after the system was put on the live service, something weird began happening. The crown to gold prices that I mentioned earlier began skyrocketing, with a particular increase in the demand for loot boxes. Why was that? Well, call me a mad conspiracy theorist, but it seems that people looked at those ratios, said, damn, those things do look cool. Sucks that I won't be able to get them before my funeral. And just started buying crowns for gold from those who sold them. Instead of lessening the need for purchasing loot crates, the system became a free advertisement campaign for them. Because now the prices aren't just measured through monetary value, they are also measured through timely value. And 41 weeks sounds a lot more painful than an unspecified amount of money. I mean, come on guys, it might be in the next loot box, just one more. The scummy way in which they went about implementing this system, as well as its results, were I guess too much to bear for me. The response from the community did not help me cope with this either. And let's just touch on the ESO community for a minute. I really like the ESO community. All but good things to say, good people, good times, good games. I still consider myself a part of it. The occasional bad apples do exist, but they are generally frowned upon. Other creators have made much better videos explaining the problems of the community, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on it here. I am, however, obligated to mention the unspoken fact that the ESO community suffers from a serious drug epidemic. You heard me right, fair people. The ESO community suffers from dangerous levels of intake of a harmful substance known as copium. No one knows exactly how this came to be, and to some extent all MMO communities have these unfortunate addicts, but the ESO community has taken things above and beyond, believing that somehow, someway, if they just sit tight and keep clapping at everything Zos does, there will be a time in which all the flaws of the game will be corrected. The servers will be fixed, there will be more collectibles to find, the crown store will be reformed, there will be new PvP areas, the bugs will be fixed, and so on and so on and so on. Although no one can pinpoint the exact origins of this epidemic, all that can be observed is that escapism begins when reality becomes too much to bear. Trust me, I'm hitting the copium as well. Despite my many attempts to get help, I still believe in this game. I don't play it right now, but I look at every single update hoping for something better. And hope is sometimes all you need to carry on. Maybe I'll make a short series looking at the newer chapters when they eventually come out. But for now, I'll lie in praying stance, hoping and coping. to get a spot as a DPS in this normal dungeon queue. Is this game dead or something? Should you play ESO? Well, in order to answer that question, I have to take into account the fact that all of us play video games for different reasons. Do you like the Elder Scrolls universe and do you want to learn more about it? Well, this is the game for you. Do you like playing MMOs as a single player game and prefer to engage in single player activities? You won't find a better MMO out there. Do you enjoy doing PvE content with your mates for hours without an end? Well, this game has got you covered. Do you enjoy collecting different items that provide your character with a unique sense of visual progression? Well then run. Run as far away as you can. I don't know, act like you're playing Hot Wheels and put on Nitron speed. Do you enjoy engaging in open world PvP with other players? Again, run. Run like you're playing FNAF and you're being chased by the sus imposter from Among Us. It's not that it's bad. It's that it is underwhelming. Now, do you enjoy partaking in a particular activity which involves swiping your mother's credit card on the screen so you won't have to spend another 10 hours completing the Siege Orders questline to get the same old abilities you already have on your other characters? Well, this game has got you covered, but I highly recommend you seek help. Thank you for sticking with me throughout this review. I know this was a little bit of a biggie one, but hey, it's over. Remember people, discussion allows us to see different viewpoints, and the more viewpoints we have, the better our thoughts can be around a subject. Something you can hang on your wall. Anyway, I now feel that a weight the size of 19 GB has been lifted off my shoulders, and I am ready to go back to the usual shit posting schedule. Have a great day, and I'll see you all very, very soon.